Hi everyone, this is Bilo here. In this video I'm going to continue from where I left off starting with the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is also known as the powerhouse of the cell, and that's because it uses glucose, which remember is a carbohydrate, to make ATP. And ATP is the form of energy that the body can use to do things. And this is the structure. It kind of looks like a bean shape. And then it has all of these, it has like 2 layers of membrane and all these little folds inside of it. And we have a whole unit just on this later in the semester. Next, we have the Golgi, and that is a capital G. It is named after someone. And its job is to basically receive things, repackage them or add things to them, and then ship them off to different parts of the cell. You could think of it as like the post office of the cell. And its structure, it kind of looks similar to the rough and smooth ER, so make sure to not mix those up. Remember that the rough and smooth ER are directly next to the nucleus, and then usually not too far from that, you'll see the Golgi. And so we will get vesicles from the smooth or rough ER. Maybe it's a vesicle containing a protein or made by the ribosomes in the rough ER. Maybe it's lipids made by the smooth ER. And the Golgi will receive that and make any modifications to it if necessary, and then send it to wherever it needs to go in the cell. And so vesicles, which I was just talking about, oftentimes you'll see those around the Golgi. Vesicles, and you can quite literally think of these as vehicles. So I think vesicle, I think vehicle, because it's used to transport and move things throughout the cell, such as proteins, lipids, whatever. A specific type of vesicle that isn't really used to move things, but rather to digest them is the lysosome. So a lysosome, excuse me, contains digestive enzymes. So that could be for breaking down food on the molecular level, like maybe carbohydrates, so that you can get the glucose molecules that you need and send those to the mitochondria to be used for energy. Or they could be used to digest maybe worn out cell parts. You could think of them as kind of like the garbage trucks of the cell. Next, we have the cytoskeleton, and as that suggests, this is the thing that makes up the skeleton of the cell. It's not just cytoplasm, the jelly-like substance that you have in the cell. You also have a lot of proteins. In that video that you watched previously, The Inner Life of a Cell, created by Harvard students, a lot of that shown in the video was the cytoskeleton and proteins. And these are protein, we can call them fibers. And this gives the cell its shape. It provides support structurally, and then also mobility or movement. This is how we move the vesicles throughout the cell. And again, it's like the skeleton. It's not just the cytoplasm that we have. We also have a lot of these proteins as well inside of the cell. So there's a couple different types of cytoskeleton. So you can have cilia. This was in one of the previous homework assignments. And these are hair-like projections on the outside of a cell, on the surface of a cell, and it helps with movement. In humans, in our airways, if you zoom in, you'll see cilia. A goblet cell is something that produces mucus. So cilia all move together in unison, kind of like a bunch of people doing the wave, and it helps to move things along that are trapped in like mucus, for example. And then you could see cilia, in something like this paramecium, something you'd find in maybe pond water, for example. And they use that cilia to move themselves and propel themselves through the water. Another type of cytoskeleton also used for movement is the flagella. It's just that instead of hair-like projections that all move in unison, this is more tail-like, or you can think of it as a whip. It's more whip-like or tail-like in structure. So, for example, this paramecium, again, something you'd probably would find in pond water, has this tail, and it's to help it move. You can also see these structures in bacteria sometimes. Again, it helps them with movement. The only example of a flagella in humans is in a sperm cell, which is only found in males. And then the last example of the cytoskeleton is the centrioles or the centrosomes. So those are technically two centrioles make up one centrosome, but we're going to use those terms interchangeably here. And they aid in cell division. So when we get to our cell division unit next semester, we'll see these and how they play a role. Basically, they help the cell when it's reproducing or dividing and becoming two cells. It helps with that process. So again, all these organelles that I've been talking about are in eukaryotic cells, which are very complex cells like our cells. And plant cells are very similar. They have all of the things I just mentioned that eukaryotic cells have, but they have some extra features as well. And mostly what I was talking about before this, these are animal cells, which are eukaryotic. Okay. Plant cells are also eukaryotic. Okay. But again, like I said, they have a couple extra features in addition to everything else that I just mentioned. So animal cells do not have a cell wall. Some prokaryotic cells, like bacteria, do have a cell wall. And plants have a cell wall. So this is a rigid structure that surrounds the plant cell. And plant cells are also usually going to be rectangular in shape, versus animal cells are usually round in shape. And then the cell wall provides structure and provides support. You could also say structure, but support and protection. Okay. And the cell wall is made up of cellulose that ends in ose. That would be a type of carbohydrate. So this is an example of a polysaccharide. And there are openings that will allow things in and out of the plant cell, because of course plant cells need things like water and carbon dioxide in order to do photosynthesis. Speaking of water, animal cells do have vacuoles, and they are just smaller. So they are small in an animal cell. Okay. Versus plant cells have what's called a central vacuole. And it's usually a pretty pronounced structure. Sometimes the nucleus isn't as obvious in a plant cell. Oftentimes you're going to see the vacuole, and it is for storage. primarily for water, because plants, of course, need water. But food can also be stored here. Ions, waste products, sometimes poison if a plant is poisonous. And when we talk about osmosis later, we'll also see how that could provide support for the plant. And then lastly, plants do have mitochondria. They can make energy and ATP. The difference is us as humans, for our animal cells, we have to consume or eat our food. We are what you call heterotrophic. We need to consume our food to get glucose and then use it to make ATP. Plants, however, they make it right there for themselves. So plants are what we call autotrophic. They can make their own food. And that's because of the chloroplast. The chloroplast is where photosynthesis occurs. And photosynthesis is how plants make glucose. And since they are making the glucose themselves, the mitochondria that they already have can go ahead and use that to make energy. So that's how plants make food or energy for themselves.